welcome to the Tom Baker Show. It is great to have you on. We are excited about everything we've got to talk about on tonight's program, and I am joined as always by Jacob Seelman, the multi-award winning journalist and editor of Steering Wheel Nation, SWN Media. And we start, as always, Jacob, with our SWN Power Performance Award. And some names on this list that I know we're going to be talking about after we actually decide on the award. But some folks had a good weekend. Let's put it like that.
Oh, absolutely. And what I love about this is this show is coming off of a weekend with no NASCAR, which means we often try to spotlight the short tracks, but this past weekend there was nothing but short track racing to talk about, which makes our poll and yours truly very happy. We start with the World of Outlaws late models and the USA Nationals at Cedar Lake Speedway, where Bobby Pierce not only won the race and banked $100,000 for doing so, he tied the single season wins record for the World of Outlaws Late Model Series with his 18th victory of the season on tour and extended his point lead as a result. Bobby is our first nominee in that familiar number 32 car. From the World of Outlaws sprint car set, we have a young PA Posse driver by the name of Logan Rumsey. Those familiar with the iRacing sprint car circles familiar with Logan, who has gone the sim to reality route and finished a career best third against the Outlaws. He's just 19 years old, oh, by the way, and only has a very small handful of Outlaws starts to his name. So what he did in carrying the mantle for the posse in the Williams Grove Speedway Summer Nationals over the weekend, very, very impressive. We have another teenager in 17-year-old Isaac Kitzmiller, who didn't win the race for the ARCA Menard Series East at Flat Rock Speedway over the past weekend, but he did make a three-wide move for the lead, and it almost stuck, too. Led a couple of laps late in that race at the Level Pebble, as Flat Rock is known by its nickname. Finished third. Like I said, career best for young Isaac. If you've not seen that move, go back and watch the highlights. It was impressive. And then we had the USAC Indiana Sprint Week champion as our fourth nominee, Kyle Cummins, who did not win as much as Justin Grant did during Sprint Week, but managed to eke out a championship by 7 points, had an average finish of 4.4 over 9 races, no finishes outside the top 10, and extended his overall USAC National Sprint Car Series point lead. In doing so, Tom, my brain is very distinctly where you might think my brain would be among these four nominees. Before I go there, where is your brain?
What hour is it? I actually am. This one for me is easy. And it's easy for a specific reason. I'm going with Logan Rumsey. And the reason I'm going with Logan is because here's this young kid, okay, who races in Pennsylvania among the posse, which to me is as competitive in its own way as either the World of Outlaws or the High Limit Sprint Car Tour is amongst each other. And this guy goes out, this young kid, and just basically drives like he's been driving for 10 years. I am choosing Logan Rumsey because I watched that race and he drove his tail off to get it. And as much as, you know, Bobby Pierce winning was impressive, I expect him to win. And his weekend wasn't without some controversy in some ways. And again, with all due respect to Isaac Kitzmiller, who surely is a rising young star, son of Jason Kitzmiller, by the way, and Kyle Cummins. I'm going with Logan Rumsey for this. This one was easy. As soon as I saw the four choices, I said, okay, I know which way I'm going with this. How about you?
Well, you know I'm partial to my sprint car racers, so obviously that's where my brain immediately went. But would you believe that we've got a unanimous grand slam for the second week in a row?
Really?
You say Logan Rumsey, I say Logan Rumsey, and I'll add to that, by the way, that Logan, for what he's done in a short time this year, he ran sixth against the Outlaws during their May swing through
Yes.
Pennsylvania. Um, and that was, I think, an eye-opening run for a lot of fans who didn't know who this young teenager
Yep.
was. Now comes back, runs third at the Grove, which, yes, he's been running at the Grove regularly this season. Still not an easy feat to do against the Outlaws.
Yep.
And a career best tour finish that cemented it for me. And our sprint car contingent in our SWN media fan base agreed as well. 57% of the fan vote
Good.
goes Logan Rumsey. So they
Good.
know what they see. They appreciate what they see. I will say, by the way, Kyle Cummins was second on that vote with 26%. So the sprint car fans, both wing and non-wing, spoke loud and clear in this week's vote. But Tom, for those sprint car and grassroots racing fans who are watching our show that don't know the name Logan Rumsey, go look him up. And not just because you can spot him from a mile away in the pit area because his hair is about carrot top red.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
No, Logan is who I think is going to be a tremendous example of a driver like Anthony Macri in 5 or 6 years that can carry the torch for the posse if you give him long enough to do so. So that would be our second unanimous Grand Slam for in as many shows on the SWN Power Performance Award. Logan Rumsey, this week's recipient of said award, and congratulations to him and to that team again on their podium run in the Williams Grove C&D Rigging Summer Nationals for the Outlaws over the weekend. Tom, we're going to have more to say on the Outlaws because next up, following this show, this show airing at the start of Knoxville Nationals week. I'm excited about that. We'll talk more about the Nationals itself a little later. Before that, you have, I don't know if I should call it a rant or a discussion or a big picture.
It's this week's main topic. Let's call it that.
Yes, main topic, big. I'll call it the big question, Tom, because that's.
Okay.
I think this is a very big question that we get to prognosticate about. SAT word of the day, by the way. Is motorsports suffering from an entertainment problem? And I say that to say this. Whether because of TV, streaming, whatever you want to say, has led us to this. We have pursued entertaining the audience, but has that pursuit started to override what I grew up, what you grew up, what a lot of fans grew up understanding was the entertainment when we were brought into loving the sport of auto racing, which is the racing?
Well, where do I start with this? Where shall I begin? So here's the way I would respond to that, because that's a great question. And honestly, there's been a lot of discussion on social media about this, and some of it got started by none other than Carson Hocevar, who's a young racer in Cup who looks at older races and basically says NASCAR's on a ventilator. Okay, with regard to a lot of the things that he sees back when he watches races from 2000 or the 90s. And he's absolutely right. And he kind of got taken to task on X and Facebook for those comments. The reality is, here's what I think has happened, okay? We have, just like you said in the question, we have started to tinker with a sport, and we are trying to artificially make it entertaining, when the reality is that when you and I grew up, and we grew up in two different eras, because I'm almost twice your age. Okay, I grew up in the 70s. You grew up in what, the
90s and early 2000s.
And so we grew up in two different eras, but we both grew up in eras that were previous to social media and big time television, though you came in at a time when we did have TV. Okay. And so here's where this goes. When I was growing up and watching races in the 70s, okay, races are just that. It's a race. And sometimes one car, like Joey Logano at North Wilkesboro, one car has a hot setup and takes off, and we don't have a ton of cautions, and nobody can compete with them. And in the course of some races, like at North Wilkesboro, a caution falls at just the wrong time, and X number of cars get trapped a lap down. So at the end, we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 cars on the lead lap. Okay, that's how the race went that day. Now, it's funny because that was the kind of race I used to watch in the 70s. Okay, but and I think more as we got to your era, Jacob, we had started, the aero game came in and we started clustering cars and packs more and you know, but it was right at the peak of NASCAR's popularity. Okay, it was still about the racing and it was about the drivers, and the entertainment came organically from things that happened that day, before the race, during the race, after the race. Okay, we did not need stage breaks, extra yellows, choose cones, restart boxes. We didn't need spin the wheel or any fancy additions to the race to make the race entertaining. Core race fans understand that some races are just going to be less drama-filled than others. Okay? And by the way, it's okay to say that the North Wilkesboro race was boring because Joey Logano stunk up the show. That doesn't mean we should be manipulating the action to pack up 40 cars because some bozo at Fox Sports, who doesn't know anything about motorsports, he only wants new fans to look at something and go, oh my gosh, there's 40 cars in a pack. There might be some passing and great racing, when there's no passing at all. Because you can't pull out a line. You have to have 6 cars go with you. Okay, we don't need all this artificial insemination, if I can borrow a term that doesn't have the least bit to do with racing and make it into a racing term. We just don't need all that. Okay, the racing itself should be entertaining, and we should allow the drivers to make it entertaining. We don't need cautions at stage breaks. I know TV wants to sell commercials. Screw that. Okay? Stage breaks should pay points. In fact, I double the points because I want the drivers to race all day. Double the stage points. Eliminate the cautions because they take too freaking long. Let's go back to having the crew chiefs actually need to think more about strategy and running out of fuel. Let's not have so many defined full field pit stop opportunities during a race as we do with the stage breaks now. I mean, the crew chiefs have too much information. They know exactly how much fuel is left. All the cars are exactly the same. And it's like we've taken all of what made the racing entertaining out of the racing, and we've replaced it with a bunch of stuff that makes it less entertaining. Fans don't care about technical stuff. They don't care about underbellies. They don't care about spoilers. They don't care about independent rear suspension. They don't want to see computers in the cars. Why did we ever feel we had to do that? So it's like we've completely, and I'm just focusing on NASCAR, but I think the same is true in a lot of other divisions, including some of the short track divisions. we've taken too much of what made racing exciting out of the racing and replaced it with stuff that doesn't. So now we feel we have to go and keep tweaking it all the time. And this is what costs you long-term racing fans. I'll stop there. Do you agree or disagree?
You threw a lot of things out there in about 5 or 6 minutes, so I'm gonna dissect this a few different ways.
Okay.
Because one of the things you highlighted was the pack racing syndrome of the drafting tracks, which might I remind people. Yeah, which might I remind people that came more out of the aero changes that were implemented after the restrictor plates have been around since the mid 80s, with Bobby Allison's crash at Talladega that ultimately led them to bring the speeds down. But if you remember, into the mid 90s, we didn't see pack racing. It wasn't until mid to late 90s and some of the aero changes that NASCAR made that kind of created pack racing was when we started to see that. Even the early to mid 90s, I think of some Daytona 500s where you had 5, 6, 7 guys that were still able to kind of break away or make moves by themselves. So no, that came as much out of the aero game as anything else compared to, just a restrictor plate, or now it's a tapered spacer. But it's still the same concept as far as bringing the speeds down. But I will agree with that, is we've gotten it to such a point that the cars are so equal in the draft that, like you said, you can't pull out and make those moves anymore. And, I don't necessarily appreciate a 200-mile-an-hour roadblock. A lot of fans talked about that in terms of the pack racing syndrome that NASCAR has created. I'll go back to I'll jump to what you said about North Wilkesboro. I was tremendously entertained by that race, and it had nothing to do with the fact that Joey Logano dominated the laps led category, or there were only 6 cars on the lead lap. Did people not watch the cat and mouse game that Joey and Denny Hamlin played through lap traffic for the better part of the last 100 to 150 laps? If you didn't think that was entertaining, I don't call you a real race fan, because you weren't watching the actual racing on the racetrack, trying to see where and how and if Denny would be able to make the move to get around Joey, is every bit of what made racing entertaining for me as a young race fan. Sometimes it is about the chess match, and that's okay.
I agree.
That's purebred racing.
Yes.
You look at other championships like F1 and IndyCar that don't need a chase reset or a postseason format to, and okay, in IndyCar the last couple of years you've had Alex Palou run away with the championship because he's just been unequivocally better. So be it. That ought to be a challenge to your favorite driver to go home and improve. Try and figure out how you can beat him.
I agree.
Sometimes that's just what racing is. It should not be about having to create 10 or 15 different rules to artificially bring everybody else up to the level of the guy that's dominating. If you figured out how to be better, good on you. We ought to be celebrating that more than we are. If you need to get better, you know what? So be it. We don't need to we don't need to be crying and complaining and saying that we need to have XYZ happen to artificially bring every driver into the conversation. I don't care whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, F1, or short track. And I think, there's still a lot of short track series that are relatively pure in terms of whether it's the season-long points battle or just the racing on the racetrack. You don't see a lot of that manipulation in Major League Sprint Car Racing. Go watch a World of Outlaws race. Go watch a high limit race for a night. It's usually the best guys find their way to the front. See David Gravel. And just, again, we have gotten such to the point of trying to chase the new race fan, that the generations beyond mine just don't seem to have that longer term attention span that you and I grew up with as race fans, that we feel like we have to find a way to go, ooh, sparkly for longer than 10 seconds at a time.
I don't necessarily agree with the attention span. I think the major disconnect really is 2 things. Number one racing, like any other sport, I suppose, but racing tends to be generational. Okay. Your parents were involved. Your grandparents were involved.
Yep.
My parents were fans. You know, my grandfather was kind of a fan. I don't know that he was really a big fan, but used to go once in a while in the old days. But my sister was a fan, so it became, me and my brother both got into it from our parents. So did you, okay?
Yep.
And so do most drivers. And, you know, there's how many second, third, even fourth generation drivers do you see in the sport?
Yep.
Okay, it's generational. So here's what NASCAR and IndyCar and even F1 to a degree, all of these sanctioning bodies need to remember one thing. Okay, if you lose the parents, you're going to lose the next generations. You can't throw something on Nickelodeon and try and artificially excite. You may get the kids to like what they see on Nickelodeon. That's not going to make them want to go to the track. You got to get them interested in cars. And, you know, and so we've got to create reasons for kids to want to be at the racetrack, because even if they go there because there's a merry-go-round at the track, they watch the cars and go, oh, what is this? This is cool. Why do you think the Indy 500 has a concert? Okay. It's like, you know, you have to remember, you can't throw away the core fan to bring in a new one. Now, you want to do a street race? Do a street race. Try it. But don't alienate what built you. It's okay to be who you are. And so those things that we've just talked about to me are huge things. Okay. I'll give you another huge thing. Okay. I keep hearing about length of races. Okay. If I had my way in NASCAR, nothing over 200 laps. That's it. Okay. The 600 would be the exception. So the big races on the super speedways wouldn't change. Okay. I would shorten some of the other ones. But the reason I say that is because I actually think they'd be better races. Now, the fans who actually go to the races still are saying, no. We don't travel, you know, hundreds of miles and spend thousands of dollars to go see an hour and a half race. All right, fair enough. Leave the races, right? Like, I can deal with that. If that's what the fans want, leave it. However, when you start a race, finish the stupid thing. Okay, none of this late night start, get to halfway and call it because you waited till 7 o'clock to start the thing. If you're going to start it, finish it. Bill France understood that if a fan paid that kind of money to go see the race, you're going to see the race. So that's why we have Monday, you know, rain dates, if you want to call them that. Okay. Was it a money loser for the sport, or did you have to have the staff back an extra day? Maybe. Okay. It's a fan's sport. So let's try and remember that. This isn't about making entertainment out of a sport. It's about making the sport more entertaining. So fix your crap on the track and you won't have to worry about a lot of this stuff that Carson Hocevar was complaining about that we don't have, or we stopped because, well, you know, now we're trying to do different things. Even the way the sport was presented, Jacob, back in the day on ESPN, much different. Okay. These networks now, especially Fox, and again, I'm holding my breath here for USA. They've got to fix how they present the sport. They've got to make it like TNT and Prime made it feel like college football. Okay. They put the drivers front and center. They made it into a big event before and after, and their coverage during was outstanding. Okay. That's the standard, and that's what we have to aspire to. We've got to stop trying to create things to entertain people while the race is going on and start really focusing in on making the racing more entertaining. If we do that, I don't think we got anything to worry about.
Real quick, I want to read Parsons' original post verbatim to illustrate everything we just talked about before we go to break. He said, sitting here watching the 2000 Talladega race, it's insane that we as a sport produce the product we give to fans and wonder why they've lost interest. This race is beautiful. The sights, the sound, the cars, the production, the commentators. It's clear as day why the sport is where it's at and not where it once was. The entertainment value of this race is so much better and so more visually appealing. Casual fans just want to be entertained. They don't care about aero, like you said, engine packages, downforce, drag, tire wear. They just want to be visually entertained and feel like they're not wasting their time watching something that's not prestigious. And I feel like you illustrated a lot of that perfectly at the beginning of where we were talking here, because he ends it by saying, now it's just cutting stuff to improve the bottom line and wondering why people lose interest or are no longer impressed. There's nothing new. Eventually they've seen it all, or it's a shell of what it once was, and there's no point of tuning in. And if we get to the point where there's no point of tuning in, then it's a very, very slippery slope to survive as a sport, and neither you nor I want to see it get to that point.
Not at all.
With that, we're going to step aside. When we come back, even more conversation on the sport, the entertainment value, and more. It's the Tom Baker Show. We're back right after this.
For race fans across the United States, GetInTheStands.com is the place to find racetracks where you live and where you're traveling. Just go to GetInTheStands.com and enter your location. You'll see the tracks within 100 miles of that point, either as a list or on a map. GetInTheStands.com is 100% free to use and mobile friendly. So whether you're on a computer, a tablet, or on your phone, there's no need to download an app. To find racetracks across the United States, open your web browser and head to GetInTheStands.com. GetInTheStands.com, your racetrack directory.
Attention track and series owners. Elevate your fan experience with the TrackTune app. TrackTune works with your PA system. Fans and teams at the track can hear the announcers through their phones, ensuring everyone hears race calls, sponsor plugs, and more during race nights. It's simple to set up, affordable, and free for fans to download and enjoy. Visit tracktune.live for all the details and join tracks nationwide on the app today.
Welcome back to the Tom Baker Show. We spent our opening segment talking about the big question and asking ourselves if motorsports is suffering from an entertainment problem. Tom, during the break, I took the liberty, by the way, of digging up some information from what you mentioned about talking about making sure there's no rain-shortened races when we wait to start a race at 7 o'clock or whatever and have interruptions. Let's remind ourselves, though, that weather affecting NASCAR races in particular is nothing new. We had weather-affected races during the inaugural season in 1949, by the way, and weather-shortened races at times, even back into the early 50s. So it's not like this is completely foreign, we'll say, but I agree with your bigger point in that you give yourself a much better chance of having a completed race if you start at 1 in the afternoon on a Sunday instead of 7 at night on a Sunday when most people have to go back to work Monday morning.
Exactly. Well, and as I say, give the fans what they came for and make every effort to give a complete show. So even if that means you run till 1:30 in the morning, because you did start at 8,
which they did at Echo Park, by the way.
And that was, I mean, I know a lot of people hated that, but honestly, I thought it was great because they didn't just stop it at halfway because the rule allowed. They actually finished the race.
They did. Absolutely. All
Which,
right.
by the way, is a fans thing, and it leads us to the next topic.
It does. Part 1B of the big question, so to speak. If race fans could have a Bill of Rights that assured them of certain things, Tom, when they went to a racetrack, what, in your mind, is on that Bill of Rights?
That is... See, I love this, and I think there actually should be a race fans Bill of Rights. And I think there should be some governing board that makes all track series follow the Bill of Rights. Okay, I'm going to borrow from this because after we did our run sheet for this show, I was trying to research and I couldn't find it. Bruton Smith and Humpy Wheeler came up with 3 Ps that basically they always wanted to make sure the fans had. I remember two. I don't remember the third, but I'm going to use them because use the two that I remember, and then I'll move on. The first one is parking. Now, it doesn't mean just a place to park. It means nice parking where hopefully if it rains, you're not stuck in a mud pile, okay? Make your parking lot appealing. I don't mean beautiful. I just mean, relatively useful on solid ground. Parking is important, and having enough parking for the people that are going to attend the track. 2, pooper, okay? That's number 1 on my list, is make sure your poopers are nice. Okay, there's nothing worse than going to a racetrack and having to go to the bathroom and walking in and just seeing nasty things. Okay, where it's old, it's a mess. The doors don't close or lock, and and God forbid, at least take care of the ladies' room if you want families to come back. That's important to me. So I think that's definitely a thing. And number 3, good food. Be in reasonable prices here. If Eldora can do it, so can any other track. You don't need to.
I'm glad you brought up Eldora, because their concession prices have led the way in the short track industry for years. And by the way, you had the wrong letter of the alphabet. It was the 3 T's that Humpy Wheeler and Bruton Smith went by: tickets, traffic, and toilets.
Oh, there we go. There was T's, not P's. That's why I was off.
Yeah, that's why you were off.
Yeah, my brain had the wrong letter. So traffic. So there we go. Ticket prices, reasonable ticket prices. Okay. And toilets. But food to me is very important as well. Yeah. If you want people to eat. No, by the way, that's the track's biggest profit center if you do it right. Now, if you're going to charge me $12 for a meal, I'm less likely to buy one. If you're going to charge me $6 or $7 a meal, I might buy 2. Okay. And so that's kind of how you got to look at it is you want a meal deal for everybody and make the food tasty. And for God's sake, don't give me the hot dogs from 3 weeks ago. Okay. Make it fresh. So those are 3 of the things. And I'll tell you the last one, a good show. Don't put 7 classes on your schedule. And if you're gonna, please don't put 3 late model classes with 8 cars in each one. Hello, Mr. Dirt Track Promoter. I'm talking to you. Okay. This is not about the back gate. It's about the front gate. So if you want fans to show up, give them a good show and make them want to come back next week because they're afraid of missing something. And that's a lost art in a lot of racing circles anymore, is the idea of creating stories and creating heroes and creating villains. And you can't do that without promotion, without marketing, and without a little bit of cooperation from your drivers, right? So I think those are some things that should be on a racing bill of rights. But your 3 T's that you pointed out, you're absolutely right. Tickets, traffic, and toilets are very, very important. Make it easy to get out after the races and don't get people stuck in a muddy parking lot. Pave the thing.
I'm going to add a 4th T to that, which kind of falls in line with what you mentioned about a good show and the number of classes, particularly in dirt track circles around here. Timeliness. We don't need to be 11, 12, 1 a.m. in the morning for a short track show and not have the show done where, if you're a parent, you're bringing 3 sleeping kids back to your car because they couldn't stay awake to the end of the show. Get the people in and out. If you can't run a short track show, and a lot of the, your Williams Groves and some of your Midwestern short tracks have it right. If you can't run a show in 3 hours, 3.5 at the most, when you're starting a 6:30 or 7 o'clock program, you're not doing it right. I'm sorry, you're just not. There needs to be an efficiency factor in getting these done because you want to, you want the fans to feel like, okay, yes, we got our money's worth, but we also got home, before it was, dark 30 in the morning. I feel like that's something I've heard a lot in my time in dirt and asphalt sprint cars is just, get us in, get us out, and let us have a good show while we're at it. So no, timeliness is going to be my fourth T that I add to that.
Let me sum this up a little bit, because let me just frame something for our audience here that I think is huge. Okay. At 5 years old, when I started going to the races, I know it was 1973. It's a long time ago. It doesn't matter. I was still 5. My brain was 5. Okay. Let me tell you what I remember about being 5 and going to the racetrack. Okay. I remember cars of all colors whizzing by with huge, the roar of these big motors that they had in them. Okay. Super modifieds, folks. For those of you who don't know, big block, 800 horsepower plus motors. Okay. I remember getting drivers' autographs every week in the pits after the races. I got to know these drivers. Some of them learned my name. It made me feel 10 feet tall. Hint, I wasn't. I'm still not. Okay. But like the experience of it was all experiential. It was all about the colors, the noise, the crowd, the roar, and just the action of the racing. Okay, at 5 years old, that's what you're looking for. If you bring your 5-year-old to the track and he gets that, here's what's missing today. Drivers don't stay around after the races anymore. People don't bring their kids to the pits anymore to meet them because of that. We've put a whole bunch of classes at some of these tracks. They all look the same. A lot of them just crash and bang. They don't run side by side. They don't pass each other. The cars a lot of them are plain. We don't get the combination of colors we used to get when we painted cars. Like, all of this makes a difference here. And in NASCAR, we've taken away the part-time teams. Okay. Those were some of the teams we all enjoyed watching. Charters have ruined it. It's harder to get to Cup now. So we've got to start addressing some of these issues, and that's what Carson Hocevar was talking about. We went really long on this in this show, but we needed to. Somebody needs to be talking about how to fix that, because that's what will bring the fans back. With that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, last lap going to kick off, and we've got a whole bunch of topics in a short amount of time. Stay with us.
For race fans across the United States, GetInTheStands.com is the place to find racetracks where you live and where you're traveling. Just go to GetInTheStands.com and enter your location. You'll see the tracks within 100 miles of that point, either as a list or on a map. GetInTheStands.com is 100% free to use and mobile friendly. So whether you're on a computer, a tablet, or on your phone, there's no need to download an app. To find racetracks across the United States, open your web browser and head to GetInTheStands.com. GetInTheStands.com, your racetrack directory.
Attention track and series owners! Elevate your fan experience with the TrackTune app. TrackTune works with your PA system. Fans and teams at the track can hear the announcers through their phones, ensuring everyone hears race calls, sponsor plugs, and more during race nights. It's simple to set up, affordable, and free for fans to download and enjoy. Visit tracktune.live for all the details and join tracks nationwide on the app today.
Welcome back to the show. The white flag is in the air. It's our last lap segment. Tom, first up, the athletic Jordan Bianchi, Jeff Gluck dropped a tease of the 2027 NASCAR schedule that is not 100% finalized, but believed to be finalized here in the next couple of weeks. Topics: Bristol going to move out of the chase for next year back to its traditional mid-August date for the night race, and a possible return of both street races, Chicago and San Diego, for 2027. Are we going in the wrong direction?
Yes. Skip one street race, bring back Chicagoland. That's a must. I don't mind Bristol being back in August. I think it'll probably be better for it. Yeah, I think that's a good change. One street race a year. That's it.
And they did. I know Watkins Glen confirmed it earlier this year, but that race going to go back to its more traditional late summer, early fall date too, which should
August,
be much
perfect.
better.
Yes,
much better weather.
Sell out.
We got the first look at the new for 2028 IndyCar over the last couple days. It tested over the weekend at IMS on the road course. couple drivers, and I actually agree with the assessment, called it a fighter jet on wheels. The thing looks good, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah, actually, I love it. I think it's awesome, especially after seeing it in motion. I love the design of it. Our producer, incidentally, Chris Murdoch, called it a transformer, so it looked like a transformer. And in black it kind of does, I guess. But I absolutely love it. I don't know how it's going to run, and it didn't have the motor in it that they would normally run, obviously. But it looks cool anyway.
David Gravel, going into the Knoxville Nationals, 6 straight podium finishes since he had an off night during the King's Royal, which of course did not pay full points toward the World of Outlaws Championship. He now leads by 180 points with 30 points races to go. Does this championship have his name laser engraved already going into the Nationals with 30 races to go, or can somebody make one last-ditch push?
Boy, up to now, I've been saying, no, long season, chill out. Somebody could get hot. Man, I'm telling you, I'm starting to lose faith here. I'm starting to think we should just give it to David and just let everybody else run for wins, because that's a hard deficit to make up unless somebody really gets hot and David really gets cold.
I got a bonus topic here for you, and I'm leaving a couple minutes because I know it's going to get you going. I just found out about this before we started taping this show. The All-Star Midget Series, Pavement Midgets, that launched for 2026, is getting ready here to have, we tape this show on a Monday. On Thursday night, they are going to have a race at Plymouth, Indiana.
Okay.
The field is going to feature Tony Stewart, Ryan Newman, and Kenny Schrader with a special, plus a special appearance by, I don't know if he's racing, God help us all if he is, with a special appearance by Bentley, as in Warren, at Plymouth, Indiana. So here's my punchline for the joke. Smoke, Rocket, Schrader, and Bentley walk into a bar.
The bar instantly explodes. So lots of stories are told there. Bentley's not racing. It is the Bentley Warren Classic, I think is what they're calling it. It's a tribute, basically, for Bentley. He'll probably be the Grand Marshal, I'm guessing. And I didn't know what you were talking about at first until you mentioned the names. So yes, first of all, Tony, is Tony actually racing?
As far as I know, yes, Tony is racing.
So Tony, Ryan, and Schrader are all racing in this race. Yep. See, that instantly is worth watching. Okay, and so I hope it's streamed somewhere, because that race is well worth watching. And this is something I think Ira Saunders from Hoosier Tire is largely responsible for, and I thank you so much, because Bentley deserves this sort of thing. And gosh, you get those 4 guys together. Unbelievable possibilities here. And by the way, I know we were going to finish on this. I'll just talk about it real quick. St. Petersburg back on the NASCAR Truck Series street race or schedule for 27. I love that. The trucks put on a better show than the Indy cars did that weekend. So good on them. Good on Fox. I think it's a nice pairing. I love it. And Tristan McKee making his truck debut at Richmond. That'll be interesting. Lots to talk about with Spire, and perhaps that'll be for a show in the next week or two. Until then, however, that's it for this episode of The Tom Baker Show. For more great content, steeringwheelnation.com, at the SWM Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Until next time, for Jacob Seelman, I'm Tom Baker. So long.